Chosen one, you took a step recently. It may have felt small, it may have felt uncertain, it may have even felt like you were just trying to survive the moment rather than making a significant move. But something happened the instant you took it. Something activated, something that had been locked in the invisible realm, prepared, assembled, and waiting for exactly that movement, shifted open, and you did not feel it, you did not hear it, but it happened. A 10-year process, 10 years of being shaped, tested, delayed, and prepared at a depth most people never have to go, clicked into completion the moment your foot landed on the other side of that threshold. And I need you to understand something right now. The waiting is not still happening. The waiting ended. You crossed a line you did not see. You moved through a door you thought was still locked. And what is on the other side of that door is not a small thing. What I want to walk you through today is the full picture of what you just stepped into, because if you do not understand what was activated, you may walk right past the evidence when it arrives. Stay with me. You did not find this message. It was sent. Before we go any further, I want to be straight with you about what today's message actually contains, because I am going to take you through 4 layers of something, and each layer is bigger than the one before it. By the time we reach the end, I will have shown you what the last 10 years of your life were actually doing in the invisible, why the step you took was different from every other step you have ever taken, what is now in motion toward you that has not yet become visible, what the one pattern is that shows up after an activation like this and threatens to quietly undo it, and what all of this says about who you actually are. Those pieces do not stand alone. They build on each other. So, if you leave before the end, you will have a part of the picture, and a partial picture is almost more dangerous than no picture at all. Stay through this. The later parts are the ones that will make the earlier parts make complete sense. Now, I want to start where I believe this has to start. Not with the blessing, not with what is coming. I want to start with where you have been, because what you have walked through is not the background of this revelation, it is the evidence for it. You have been carrying something for a long time, not the kind of weight that lightens on its own with time, the kind that gets heavier if you do not understand what it is for. There have been quiet hours, early mornings or late nights, when the room was still and no one was watching, where you sat with a version of a question you did not let yourself say too loudly. A question that sounds something like this: how much longer? How much longer before something actually shifts? How much longer before the work I have been putting in and the faith I have been holding on to produces something I can see and hold in my hands? You pressed through the seasons when the silence from above went on longer than felt reasonable or fair. You pressed through the months when people around you moved forward in the exact areas where you had been standing still, and you watched and kept going anyway. You pressed through the moments when, even holding on to the belief that something was being prepared for you, felt like its own separate form of exhausting labor. And recently, without a great amount of ceremony, without a crowd, without all the answers lined up in a way that made the next move feel safe or obvious, you moved. You took a step, and that step is what brought you here today. Now, I am not going to tell you yet exactly what that step triggered. That is the revelation this entire message is building toward. But I want you to pay attention to something that may already be happening in the days around that move. Because there are shifts that occur when an activation takes place, and they do not announce themselves loudly. They are quiet and easy to miss, easy to file away as coincidence if you do not know what they mean. The first one is a kind of stillness you may not have felt in a long time. Not excitement, not a dramatic high, just a quietness underneath the normal noise of life. Something that used to be pulled taut, like a cord under tension for years, has been allowed to release. You may have noticed it and not known what to call it. The second is a shift in what you can tolerate. Things that used to feel familiar now feel like they are asking for a version of you that no longer fits. Conversations that used to feel normal now feel like they are pulling you in a direction your life is no longer moving. Environments that once felt comfortable now feel like old coats that were cut for a smaller version of you. The third is the beginning of a direction. Not a complete picture with every detail filled in, more like a sense of orientation emerging out of what used to feel like fog. Like a compass that has been spinning for a long time, has settled quietly towards something true. The fourth is a decreasing need to explain yourself. Less urgency around making people understand your choices before you make them. Something that functions like a quiet confidence, one you do not fully understand yet, has taken up residence underneath the uncertainty, like a floor that has been laid that was not there before. These are not signs of confusion. These are signs that something has already changed. These are your life recalibrating after a threshold was crossed. These are the signals that the invisible realm registered your movement before the visible layer had time to catch up. And here is the first thing I need you to understand. The step you took was not the beginning of something new. It was the completion of something that has been under construction for a very long time. You were the right person. This was the right moment. That was the right move. Think of a tree, not the part above the ground that everyone can see, but the part beneath it that no one can see. The root system. For years, sometimes decades, a tree does its most important work entirely underground, invisible to everyone standing near it. The surface looks exactly the same, nothing to show, no evidence of progress. And then, when the roots are deep enough and strong enough to sustain the full weight of what is about to grow above them, the tree emerges. Not because something suddenly became possible that was not possible before, because what was always being built below the surface finally reached completion, and the emergence was authorized. You have been in an underground season, chosen one. The decade behind you was not delay, it was not punishment, it was root work. And the step you took recently was not you beginning the climb. It was the moment the invisible construction was declared finished. But what was actually being built in those 10 years, and why it required everything it required? That is the layer I need to take you into next. Because most people who go through a season like yours survive it, but never understand it. They receive the other side, but they never receive the full map of what the hard side was doing. And I am not going to let that happen to you. What I am about to show you is going to permanently change how you see the last 10 years of your life. And once you see it this way, you will not want to see it any other way. Take a moment to recognize where we are. I just told you that the step you took was not a beginning, but a completion. And I told you that the decade before it was construction. Now, let me give you the full picture of what was being built and why it required exactly what it required. Because here is what almost no one tells you about a long preparation season. When you are inside it, it feels like one thing. When you are finally standing on the other side of it, which is where you are standing right now, it is something completely different. The first reason the decade was necessary is what I want to call the load test. You cannot build a person to carry something genuinely large by exposing them only to comfortable things. The weight of what was designed for you, the scale of what is now authorized to arrive, requires a specific kind of strength. And that strength is not something you can read your way into or decide to have one morning. It is built over time, through seasons that pushed you past what you thought your limit was, and then past that again. The hard years were not random suffering, they were calibrated formation. Your capacity was being expanded to match what was always intended for you. The second reason is something that had to be released before you could cross the threshold. A version of you, maybe more than one, had to be left behind during that decade. The version that needed constant approval before moving. The version that had attached identity to outcomes it could not control. The version that measured worth by how quickly results arrived rather than by who it was in the waiting. Those versions could not carry what is coming, not because they were failures, but because they were not built for this level. What was stripped away during those seasons was not taken from you. It was cleared out of your path. The third reason involves the people, the relationships that ended during that decade, the friendships that dissolved without a clean explanation, the connections that faded. These were not signs that something was wrong with you. They were not evidence that you pushed people away or failed to hold things together. They were a clearing. Not everyone can be in the room where what is coming actually happens. Some people were assigned to specific chapters of your life, and not to all of them. Their exit was not abandonment. It was the invisible preparation of the environment you are stepping into now. What felt like isolation was actually incubation. What felt like being passed over was actually being protected from paths that would have cost you more than they gave you. What felt like stagnation was actually the settling of a foundation that had to be solid before anything could be built on top of it. What felt like loss was actually the creation of space. And that is not random, that is not coincidence, that is not accident. Now I want to show you something from an ancient text that I believe speaks directly to where you are standing right now. There is a line that speaks of God restoring the years the locust has eaten. Most people hear that and picture getting back what was taken, returning to where they were before the hard season and starting over from there. But that is not what the original word carries. In the Hebrew, the word translated as restore comes from a root that connects to shalom, the word shalem. And shalem does not simply mean return. Shalem means to be made complete, to be made whole, to be fully paid, with everything owed, and then more. It is the language of a legal verdict, where a court does not just order the thief to return what was stolen, but to pay back far beyond the original amount. If someone took $100 from you, Shalem says, the verdict requires them to return 500. What that means for you is this: the years you walked through are not simply going to be handed back to you. They are going to be repaid, with compounding return on every season of faithfulness, every season of silence, every morning you got up and kept going without visible confirmation. What God does is not restoration the way the world understands restoration. It is overpayment, because Shalem does not balance the ledger. It overcorrects it in your favor. There is a man I keep returning to when I think about a season like the one you have walked through. He knew from a young age that something significant was assigned to his life. He had a sense of it before any of the evidence arrived, the way you sometimes know things before your circumstances confirm them. And then the opposite of his assignment happened. He was betrayed by the people closest to him. He was thrown into a pit. He was sold. He worked his way up inside an unfamiliar house, only to be falsely accused and put in prison. 13 years passed between the moment he understood what he was meant for and the day the door opened. And here is the detail I need you to hold. The day that door opened, it did not open because he finally did enough, or prayed hard enough, or waited long enough. It opened because the architecture was ready, because what needed to be built in him through 13 years of being unseen, tested, and formed at a level most people will never experience, had reached completion. The door did not open because his time ran out. It opened because his formation reached fullness. You have been in that season, and you just crossed the threshold he crossed. Now you might feel like I have given you the picture, the formation, the 3 reasons, the ancient language, the parallel. You might think the map is complete. It is not yet, because there is something that happens inside the chosen one during a decade of preparation that almost no one addresses. Something that occurs not only in the spirit, but in the brain itself. And if you do not understand this, you may arrive at the threshold fully activated, and then find that the instrument meant to carry the blessing forward is not operating at the level it needs to. There is a frequency of the brain, a brainwave state that researchers describe as the state where learning is effortless, where intuition is sharpest, where the right connections seem to arrive without being forced. Scientists call it gamma. Children have it naturally and abundantly. It is, in the truest sense, the God-given frequency of the mind. And what the research documents consistently is that extended seasons of sustained pressure and waiting suppress it over time. That matters for you right now, because you just crossed a threshold, and the mind that carries you into what is coming deserves to be recalibrated to its full capacity. There is a neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake who has spent more than 30 years researching exactly this, how to bring the mind back into gamma without hours of daily practice or expensive equipment. He compressed that research into an audio technology called the Genius Song. 7 minutes, headphones on. That is the entry point, not meditation, not a new discipline to build. 7 minutes, and the brain begins to move back toward the frequency it was always designed to operate at. I have placed the information in the pinned comment for anyone who feels drawn to investigate it. It is a tool, not a requirement. Look into it only if something in you resonates with what I just described. The price for anyone coming through this specific message is not the standard one, and the details are in the comment below. But the neuroscience is not the revelation. The gamma state is the instrument. What I am about to give you in the next part of this message is the revelation, the full picture of what the activation of a 10-year blessing says about who you actually are, because there is an identity at the center of this that you have not yet been given language for. And once you receive it, it will change how you carry everything that comes next. And here is where the picture becomes something different entirely, because everything I have shown you so far, the formation, the 3 reasons, the ancient word, the blueprint that was being drawn underground, all of that describes what happened to you. What I want to give you now describes what happened in you. Who was being built while all of that was being built around you? And this is the part that changes how you carry everything from this day forward. A 10-year blessing is not just provision. It is not just an open door or a sudden windfall. It is a commissioning. It is the moment the universe matches its resources to a specific assignment, and the assignment is always dependent on the person who is ready to hold it, which means what is coming toward you right now is not generic. It was not designed for just anyone who waited long enough. It was shaped specifically around what you are. And I need to name what that is. There are 5 things I want to say about you. Not aspirations, not goals to work toward. Things that are already true about who you are, evidenced not by what you claimed, but by what you survived. The first is this: you are a pioneer. And I do not mean that as a motivational label. I mean it in the most precise sense of the word. A pioneer does not follow a path that already exists. A pioneer creates the path by walking it first, often without confirmation, often without company, often without anyone ahead of them who can say with certainty that this is the right direction. The decade you walked was not on a well-worn road. There were seasons where you had to choose a direction without a map, where the only evidence you had was something you felt underneath the noise, rather than something you could point to and explain. That is not stubbornness. That is the qualifying characteristic of someone who was always meant to go first. You were not lost during those years. You were blazing a trail that others will one day walk because you made it through. The second is this: you are a spiritual warrior. And a warrior is not someone who is never afraid. A warrior is someone who feels the full weight of the opposition and does not let that weight become the final decision. There were moments in the last 10 years where giving up would have made complete sense to anyone watching from the outside, where stopping would have been the reasonable, defensible choice. And you did not stop. That is not luck. That is a specific kind of strength, the kind that is trained into a person through seasons that demanded more than comfort could produce. You were trained for this. The decade was your training ground, and you came out of it as exactly the kind of person you were always intended to be. The third is this: you are a cycle breaker. The step you took recently did not only move you, it ended something. A pattern that had been running, possibly for longer than just your own story, was interrupted by the move you made. What you carry forward will not carry that pattern with it. The next chapter of your life, and the lives that are connected to yours, will not be shaped by what shaped the last 10 years. You broke it. That is not a small thing. That is one of the most significant things a person can do, and it requires exactly the kind of formation you went through to make it possible. The fourth is this: you are a builder. What is coming to you is not simply for you. There is weight to it, because it is meant to bear something beyond your own life. A structure, a space, something that others will stand on. Something that will carry people who have not yet arrived at the threshold you just crossed. The size of what was prepared for you makes more sense when you understand that it was never only designed to fit inside the borders of your personal story. You were built to build, and what you build will outlast the season you are entering. The fifth is this: you are a seer, and I mean this carefully. Before your conscious mind confirmed the timing of that recent step, something in you already knew. The move was not fully logical. It did not wait for all the evidence to be in place. Something beneath your thinking, something that has been sharpened through years of paying attention, in seasons when there was very little obvious to pay attention to, sensed the moment and moved you into it. That is perception, not luck. That is a gift that was formed through exactly the kind of long and quiet season you have walked. And now, I want to say something that I do not want you to let pass over you without fully receiving it. I want you to stay with this next moment, because this is not my word for you. This is what I sense being spoken over this specific message, over every chosen one who has made it this far into this today. I did not build you through 10 years of fire to hand you something ordinary. What has been assembled for you is in proportion to what you were assembled through. Let me give you one picture of what this actually looks like when it arrives. There is a chosen one I am aware of, who, 9 months before everything changed, walked away from a position that was stable and familiar, and, by the measurement of everyone around him, the sensible thing to stay in. He had no backup arrangement. He had people in his life who questioned the move directly and out loud. He described the decision to himself afterward as simply not being able to stay, as though something in him could not be made to remain past a certain point. The visible consequences of that step were hard for nearly 6 months. Then, on a day he did not schedule or plan for, a conversation began that he did not initiate, and it led to an opportunity that was precisely, not approximately, but precisely, what the decade had prepared him for. He used these words to describe it. He said it was like being handed a key that fit a lock he had not seen yet. And then he said he realized later that the key had been cut over 10 years. and the step he took was him finally picking it up. He proved himself in silence before anything in the visible world confirmed what the invisible had already decided. That is not an unusual story among those who have walked the kind of decade you walked and then taken the kind of step you took. It is the pattern. And now, I want to give you something practical to anchor this with. There are 3 markers that distinguish a threshold move from an ordinary decision, and I want you to run your step through them right now, in your mind, as I name each one. The first marker is cost. A threshold move costs you something real, not something trivial, not a minor inconvenience, something actual, comfort, approval, a familiar identity, a version of safety you had spent time building. If the step cost you something that felt genuinely significant, that is not evidence that you made a mistake. That is the first marker of a move that carries real weight. The second marker is visibility. A threshold move is made before the outcome is confirmed, not after the path is lit all the way to the end, not after you received the sign you were waiting for. Before, the uncertainty was still present when you moved. That is not recklessness. That is the defining characteristic of a step that changes the trajectory rather than just adjusting it. The third marker is the quality of the knowing underneath. A threshold move feels different from other decisions, quieter, not louder, less debated internally, not more. There was a certainty underneath the fear, rather than certainty replacing the fear. Both things were present at the same time, the fear and the knowing was the one that moved your feet. Run your recent step through those 3, and if it qualifies, then everything I have described about the activation is not a general message. It is a map drawn specifically for your life. But I would not be serving you well if I stopped here, because there is a pattern that shows up in the days and weeks after a threshold crossing, one that is predictable, almost universal among chosen ones, and one that, if you do not recognize it and understand what it actually is, has the ability to quietly undermine the very move that activated everything. I need to take you to that next, because knowing this might be the most practically important part of this entire message. After a threshold activation, the mind does something very specific. It looks for evidence. And when the evidence does not arrive on the timeline the mind expected, the mind begins to construct an alternative explanation, a quieter, darker one. Maybe I was wrong about this. Maybe the step was a mistake. Maybe I misread the timing. Maybe nothing actually changed. Maybe this is the same as all the other moments. I believed something was shifting and then had to make peace with the fact that it did not. Maybe the blessing was for someone else who had what it takes, and I just convinced myself I was that person. I know the shape of that thought. I know how it arrives, not loudly, not all at once, but in small installments, in the quiet moments, in the mornings before the day picks up, in the pauses between activity, when the mind has space to revisit the decision and ask whether it was real. And I want to tell you exactly what that thought is. It is not a correction. It is not wisdom, arriving late to warn you about a mistake. It is protection. It is the brain, which lived through 10 years of hoping and pressing and not seeing, doing what it learned to do during those years. To protect you from a disappointment, it does not believe it can survive again. The doubt is not a signal from above. It is a signal from inside a nervous system that has been carrying something heavy for a long time, and that learned to hedge, because hedging was the only way to keep going without breaking. That doubt is not evidence against the activation. It is evidence of how much the waiting cost you. So here is what I need to give you permission for. You are allowed to not have visible proof yet. You are allowed to feel uncertain while still being in motion. You are allowed to protect what is being built in you right now, without explaining it to everyone who asks. You are allowed to take the activation seriously before a single person in your life can see it from the outside. And you do not owe anyone a performance of certainty while you are still absorbing what has shifted beneath the surface. And here is a framework I want you to carry into the days ahead. 3 things to do with the doubt when it arrives. The first is to stop measuring against the old timeline, the period before the threshold had its own pace, its own rhythms, its own rules. What comes after a threshold crossing does not follow those same rules. The season you are in now moves differently. If you apply the old measurements to the new season, you will consistently read normal new season movement as failure. Stop using the old clock to measure new time. The second is to return to the markers, not the evidence. When the doubt is loudest, go back to the 3 markers I gave you. Did the step cost you something real? Yes. Did you move before the outcome was confirmed? Yes. Was there a knowing underneath the fear? Yes. Those are permanent facts. They do not change based on what the visible layer looks like today. Anchor yourself there when the evidence has not yet arrived. The third is to protect the silence around what is building. The activation that happened when you took that step does not need you to announce it, defend it, or explain it to people who did not witness the decade that made it possible. It needs you to steward it, quietly, the way you steward something fragile and valuable in the early stages before it has fully arrived. The blessing in motion does not become more real because people believe in it, and it does not become less real because they do not. Now, I need you to stay with me for what comes next, because everything I have told you in this message, the formation, the construction, the identity, the obstacle, all of it has been building toward one thing, one truth that recontextualizes everything you have walked through, not just the last 10 years, everything. I want to say something over you that I do not take lightly. This is not my analysis. This is what I sense being spoken over every chosen one who pressed through to this point in this message today. Receive it without minimizing it. The 10 years were not a cost charged to you, they were an investment made in you. Every season of silence, every season of being passed over while others moved forward. Every morning you got up and pressed through without confirmation. Every season of carrying something no one around you could fully see or understand. Every single one of those days was watched. Every single one was being built on. And when you took that step, you were not making an independent decision. You were completing what was begun 10 years ago. The blessing that moves toward you now is not a response to that single step. It is the return on a decade of investment. And a decade of faithful investment does not produce a small return. And now let me give you the thing this entire message has been building toward. The mega revelation that recontextualizes everything. Here it is. Your step did not activate the blessing. Your step was the culmination of 10 years of activations. Every time you chose to keep going when stopping would have made sense. Every time you pressed through a season of silence without letting it become the final word. Every time you made the harder and truer choice over the comfortable and familiar one. Those were not ordinary moments. Those were activations, one after another, building on each other, compounding through the years, reaching toward a single point of fullness. And the step you took recently was not the cause of what is coming. It was the completion, the final note in a chord that has been building for 10 years. The decade was the investment, the step was the completion. What comes now is the return. What felt like you surviving the decade was actually the decade being permanently built into you. What felt like waiting for the blessing was actually the blessing being constructed all around you in the invisible, piece by piece, designed to fit the specific person you were becoming through the waiting. What felt like one difficult step was actually 10 years of steps arriving at the single moment when they could all be counted as one. I want to give you something to do with this before we close. Not a task, a mental movement. Wherever you are right now, I want you to let yourself do this inwardly. In your mind, I want you to walk back to the beginning of the decade, not to relive it, just to stand at the start of it and look forward, the way you might look at a construction site before a building is finished. And now, I want you to walk forward through the years, not rushing, just moving through them. And as you walk, I want you to do something you could not do when you were inside those seasons. I want you to notice the building going up around you, the walls being laid, the foundation going deeper, the structure rising in the invisible. See the formation not as years of suffering, but as years of construction. Real work, intentional work, work that knew exactly what it was building toward. And now, step through the threshold you just crossed, and turn and face what is ahead. Notice the scale of it. Notice that it has weight to it, real weight, the kind of weight that tells you it was built to last. And notice that it was shaped with your exact dimensions in mind, not approximately, precisely. Carry that, because what I want to close with is the final word over this season, the sealing of what was activated. And that is where I am taking you now. We are at the closing of this message, and before I speak the final word over you, I want to offer something that I believe is relevant to where you are standing right now at the threshold. With a decade of formation behind you and a season of compounding return beginning to unfold, everything we have talked about today, the activation, the formation, the identity, what comes next, all of it flows through the same instrument, your mind, your brain, the organ through which every blessing you receive will first be processed, interpreted, and carried into the world. And what the research that I referenced earlier makes clear is that the mind of a chosen one who has been under the weight of a long preparation season is not automatically at its full capacity simply because a threshold has been crossed. The gamma state, the God-given brainwave frequency of full mental capacity, the one that was naturally abundant in you as a child and was suppressed by the sustained pressure of years of carrying something heavy, does not automatically reset when the season changes. Which is why I want to return to the tool I mentioned earlier. Dr. Robert Lake has spent 34 years on one question: how do you bring a person back to the gamma frequency without requiring them to rebuild a complex daily practice from scratch? The answer he arrived at is an audio track. 7 minutes, headphones on. That is all. The technology is called brain entrainment, which means the audio is engineered to guide the brain back into the gamma state through sound alone, without effort, without discipline, without a morning routine that demands things from you before the day has even begun. Now, let me be honest with you about the options. If you wanted to access gamma through traditional means, biofeedback therapy runs around $300 per session. Clinical-grade equipment for home use costs upward of $7,000. Years of consistent meditation practice produce results, but they ask months and years of you before they produce them reliably. Dr. Lake compressed that research into a 7-minute file. The original price is $49. For anyone coming through this specific message, the price has been set at $39. This is not available on Amazon, on any streaming platform, or through any other source. The mission behind this pricing is that the people who most need this are the ones who have already given the most, and a tool like this should not be inaccessible to them. That is the logic behind the number. What comes with it includes a second audio called Genius Child, which works the same technology for younger minds, a guided visualization for the 4 areas of life most people want to see transform, a copy of the original book that the film The Secret drew its ideas from, and an infographic of 5 habits that consistently align with the kind of life you are building toward. The full money-back guarantee is unlimited. You can use it every day for a month and still receive a full refund if nothing shifts. The only risk is not investigating. There are imitation files out there that carry the same name without the technology. Audio that sounds similar but carries no brain entrainment. The only way to receive what I am describing with the full technology, the 4 bonuses, and the guarantee intact is through the link I have placed in the pinned comment below this video and in the description. That is the only verified source. Everywhere else is a copy of the name without the substance. If something in you resonates with this, the information is waiting in the pinned comment. This is not a sales moment, it is a provision moment, and I leave it with you to receive as you feel led. Now, the closing. I want to name what you carried through this message today, because arriving here was not passive. You sat with the weight of a decade. You let yourself receive an identity that may be larger than you have previously allowed yourself to hold. You looked at 10 years of hard seasons and let the possibility in that all of it was intentional, all of it was building, all of it was moving toward a specific person at a specific threshold. That is not nothing. That is not small. That is not forgotten. There are 3 things I want you to carry forward from today. Hold them close, not as information, but as operating instructions. The first is this: do not minimize the step in conversation. When you talk about what you did recently, when others ask why or how or what you were thinking, resist the pull to reduce it to something manageable for people who did not witness the decade. You do not owe anyone a smaller version of what actually happened. Let it be what it was. The second is this: steward the silence. What is in motion toward you right now does not need an announcement. It needs protection. A seed that has just broken through the surface does not need a crowd around it. It needs careful, quiet tending in the early days before it has enough strength to be fully visible. This is that period. Tend it quietly. The third is this: learn to recognize the small confirmations. What arrives first will not look like the full evidence. It will look like a conversation that comes from an unexpected direction, a door that opens without you pushing on it, a clarity that settles over a decision you have been turning over for a long time. These are not coincidences. These are the early installments of the return on a decade of investment. Learn to receive them as what they are. And now I want to speak the final word over you, over every chosen one who pressed through to the end of this today. Receive this. Do not deflect it. Do not qualify it before it has a chance to land. You did not come this far for a small return. The decade you walked was not in proportion to a minor upgrade. The formation you went through, the weight you carried, the seasons of silence, the mornings you got up again after the nights that tried to convince you to stop, none of that was in proportion to a small gift. The return does not balance the investment. It exceeds it. What moves toward you now was sized to match what you survived. Receive it without reducing it. You earned the right to believe it. You are the pioneer who crossed the threshold when others turned back at the edge. You are the spiritual warrior who held the ground through 10 years of pressure that would have broken a person who was not being built for exactly this. You are the cycle breaker who ended something that had been running far too long, so that what comes next in your line carries none of the weight of what came before. You are the builder whose season of underground construction has reached completion, and what you build in this next season will outlast you. You are the seer who moved before the evidence arrived, because what is in you sees further than what is around you. You are not waiting anymore. You are not questioning anymore. You are not the person who stood on the other side of that threshold wondering if the move would ever come. You are the person who moved. Walk carefully into what has been prepared for you, not because you might drop it, but because you have learned, through everything, how to honor what is holy. If there is someone in your life who is in their own decade of preparation, who has been pressing through and carrying something without confirmation, who has not yet been told that their step matters, send this to them, not as content, as a message, because the message that found you today was sent, and it may be time for it to find them.